For now, this is a Patreon and channel member exclusive video. Thank you folks so much for choosing to help support the channel. It really means a lot, and I cannot express enough my gratitude. So recently, I published a review video on the latest Onewheel model from Future Motion, the Onewheel XR Classic. Well before then, really since the board's release, the comparison of it to DIY VESC-based boards has popped up. Usually in some form of, do I buy the XR Classic or do I go VESC? Frankly, I do not think that's a question with a simple, actionable answer. VESC as an answer is pretty loaded, and I am of the opinion that, like most things, it depends. After a bit, I noticed a spirited discussion in the comments of the XR Classic review video, basically about that same kind of topic, but with a bit more specificity on the VESC end of things. By the way, if you are pretty unaware of what VESC and VESC Onewheels are, I made a video a long time ago laying it out in more detail, in an effort to explain what this stuff even is. I'll link to it in the description area, it may be helpful for you. Now, the question of Future Motion Onewheels versus VESC is something that still pops up in conversations, mostly online, of course, in various spaces spanning the Facebook groups, Discord servers, Telegram chats, but also sometimes in real life during group rides. Often enough, it devolves into a less than useful back and forth that kind of resembles the iPhone versus Android debates of the early 2000s. I'll try to get back to that later. It's an important analogy, probably, or maybe not. Anyway, I originally figured that this topic was not actually video-worthy, since people will talk about what they want to talk about, and that's totally fine. Expressing and arguing about opinions and toys is itself a common form of entertainment, and in some cases more so than the product itself that's being talked about. However, there is something I believe is worth clarifying because it kind of gets lost in the sauce, and there's a bit of unfairness and sometimes misrepresentation and lack of perspective that happens in this tiny little niche hobby conversation. The issue is kind of simple. It's not really Onewheel versus VESC because VESC is not really a single thing and it never has been. Future Motion is a company that makes the Onewheel, trademarked, branded product. It is a thing you can buy. VESC is not a product and has never really been a product. It's a software project aimed at enthusiasts and experts to use in a bunch of different ways to run a bunch of different kinds of motors. It just so happens that VESC can run a one-wheel motor, and the software branches of that have been developed enough through donated time by a few talented and motivated people. So much so that in many people's opinions, the resulting device rides more smoothly and offers an overall superior ride feel to that of a branded Future Motion one-wheel product. And a lot of that motivation may very well be in an effort to get away from the increasingly locked down and controlled environment that comes with buying a Future Motion branded one-wheel product. But the reality is not that you just run a motor with VESC and it's magically amazing. With a couple of exceptions, with at best questionable quality track records, VESC Onewheel is an enthusiast-targeted specialty hobby area that requires active ownership, understanding, and maintenance of the device. I am speaking in umbrella terms here, by the way, since there's always someone operating on the worked for me, quote-unquote, mindset that ignores that if their VESC board magically forgets their settings somehow, which has happened, by the way, more than once, stops charging, doesn't turn on, whatever, they have no idea what to do and have to go into the dredges of the DIY crowd to learn how to take an active role in the ownership of their device. VESC Onewheel and the DIY scene is a strange, hazard-laden rabbit hole filled with big promises and relatively quiet efforts towards actual battery safety and product quality. Note that I did say relatively quiet, not none. There are efforts in that direction, they just aren't always at the forefront, and sometimes get tainted by other kinds of big promises, distracting sales tactics, and lack of understanding that gets covered over by ego. It's very much a Wild West kind of thing with little to no accountability, but also little to no restriction on what can be made by folks who are willing to do the one-wheel equivalent of driving without seatbelts. It's very much a double-edged sword, and like everything else, it all depends. It depends on who you believe about what, how hungry you are for the next set of big numbers, or how little you want to futz around with a board, and of course, what you value and who you decide to buy from. If you're a DIY kind of person, chances are you can build yourself an entire one-wheeled board from scratch that works like a dream and that you never really have to worry about. That's mostly what I aim for myself and have had decent luck with, usually at the expense of the latest but not greatest, and not pushing limits that some may feel are merely suggestions. As a friend of mine often says, you get to pick, choose, and refuse. If you simply don't want to get your hands dirty, you can commission a builder or a shop to help you assemble parts, come up with a custom solution, convert over an existing broken one-wheel. There are a lot of things you can do. But within that range of options, you have a more Wild West situation where some folks are more sure of their skill set than they probably should be, and some builders will basically do anything without much thought of paths of liability, what happens if and when things fail, how much that whole service situation costs, and who gets the blame for what when things go wrong. Since VESC is a technical, enthusiast-targeted area, you're able to adjust settings for just about everything. And if some of those settings are wrong enough, the machine can actually hurt you and damage your property. Whoever last hit right settings in VESC tool, intentionally or unintentionally, is who determines whether or not you're likely to nosedive, the board ghosts into a wall, charges or doesn't, or never works again. Is it all the customer's problem when the board leaves the builder's hands? Does the rider have to chase down individual manufacturers and spend time in the VESC groups and chats trying to figure out what went wrong? Do other enthusiasts have to donate their time troubleshooting an unknown device of unknown build quality after the builder of the board and the vendors of the parts have made their money from the sales of those things? How long does the goodwill and patience of community members last before they just get tired of cleaning up the messes left by irresponsible vendors who happily take money for beta test level products and blame the rider for breaking it because they ride too hard or something like that? I don't have any answers for any of that, and as of now, the goodwill present in the VESC community is still largely strong and positive, which is a good thing and a mark of the character of DIY-minded people. For what it's worth, I have a great amount of respect and regard for that area of the community for those reasons, and despite my often pessimistic outlook, I try to contribute however I can. I and other builders are often still surprised by just how bad a lot of the work is in the VESC one-wheel space. While my focus these days is mostly building and developing batteries, I still take some repair projects just to keep myself sharp and aware of what's going on in the market, and I have seen some things. Really rough stuff, careless assemblies, hazardous ideas, you name it. Stuff made from people I don't know as well as reputable builders. That phrase itself gets diluted day by day also, since you can gain a reputation by just giving out free products, having affiliate marketers, sponsoring racers, and constantly posting on social media about how amazing your stuff is. Or, at the expense of really strong irony, having a YouTube channel. To be fair, I'm sure if I look back at things I made 3 years ago, I would be pretty damn embarrassed of my own work, so there's that. The point is, there is no one single VESC one-wheel thing, it is not a monolith. And understanding that in good faith, I believe, is important because it affects multiple areas of a hobby community. It is expected for there to be ego-driven and tribalistic interactions between enthusiasts who are passionate about a sport, a hobby, one brand, another brand, whatever. It's human, it happens. But those kinds of conversations are usually more fruitful when most parties involved understand the messy reality. I've been met with the criticism that VESC one-wheels are too finicky, always break down, and the rider always has to mess with or fix settings. That may be so as far as that person's experience is concerned. That could very well be all they see in their regional community, and that's the view they have to work with. It is not my view, and it's not the entirety of the hobby. Quite the opposite. If I build a board for myself or a friend or whatever, and they have to fix it often, I consider that a personal and professional failing. Others may consider that normal, as they like to tinker. But if you flip that situation around, you get a common occurrence where fans of DIY and VESC one-wheels will see a future motion product owner having trouble with their device, and surely there will be the advice to go VESC or VESC it. That's also kind of problematic because, again, VESC is not really one thing, so what are they to do? Ask about it in social media groups where they'll be bombarded by vendors trying to sell them things? Maybe. And if they have a bad experience with it because they're misguided, misinformed, and just sold things with fancy specs and are left to pick up the pieces, then what? What if the controller blows up in their hands because no one told them this specific thing was wired in reverse? What if they need help and they don't even know what a multimeter is? What if they have a battery failure because they just went and bought the cheapest thing, or something that someone else recommended because that person has an affiliate marketing deal, or the vendor is their friend or something? Who's liable? Who gets footed with the tech support? Who is going to actually care and donate their time and possibly lose money trying to help this person? These are not hypotheticals, by the way. These are situations that have been brought to my repair shop over the last 2 or 3 years or so in greater numbers than you would think, which does make sense to me since social media is rarely populated by failure or admitting ignorance or the boring reality of work. It complicates people's lives, makes them feel less secure about spending money, and that kind of thing just affects the whole community. So while this has meandered away from the title of the video, it's mostly just to try to frame things in as practical a way as I can. The VESC Onewheel thing is very much a community-driven and fueled machine, and that is a beautiful thing. It is also the source of some of its greatest issues, and hopefully the source of some of those solutions. At the moment, it often seems like, at least when glancing through the social media landscape, that passions can overshadow practicality, and in the throes of heated debate and damaged egos, we let the idea of quote-unquote better, whatever that really is, get the best of us. Back to the whole Android versus iPhone thing, I used to only use Android phones, since the first HTC Droid Aris through the Google Nexus phones, and lastly, the Pixel 3, which I still use as a shop phone to set up boards on VESC. It works great. I use an iPhone now though, the 13 I think, and I won't replace it until it breaks. That's kind of one of the few material luxuries I really allow myself these days. Not the newest phone, just a separate phone fund that sits somewhere until my phone actually breaks. Then I just go out and get a new one with cash so I don't have to deal with repairs or downtime or payment plans or any of that. I consider that the price of freedom regarding my communication device. I did the work and budgeting to not have to worry about it. It's just a device I try to use and think about as little as possible, and in that specific area, I chose convenience, which is what many one-wheel riders want. Open the box, turn the device on, use it. In the PEV riding area of my life, one-wheels are basically work for me now, and I've since abandoned other hobbies besides learning guitar, which I do on a Partscaster, a Fender Telecaster that I put together from parts a couple of years ago. By the way, I learned how to assemble, wire up, set up, and do fretwork on the guitar before I even really started playing it. And it's the only guitar I like to play because it feels and sounds exactly like I wanted it to. The learning curve and the cost of tools and knowledge was the price I paid for the result I wanted. The freedom to have an instrument that Fender would not offer from the factory. Convenience was not at all the priority. Control, choice, and project-based learning was. My board is like that. It's exactly how and what I want it to be. It's not anyone else's vision, it's mine. And the last number of years I've spent learning how to build things, run a repair shop, and learn about battery assembly and design is the longer-term price I paid to end up with the freedom to have one-wheeled boards that are not offered from a factory. For some, an off-the-shelf American Ultra Telecaster is the holy grail. For others, the GT-S Series Rally is. It doesn't really matter what you choose, so long as it's an informed choice. As always, I really appreciate your viewership. Thank you for listening, and take care.